Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Power Monkey Podcast. We have an incredible person on today, someone that plays an incredibly important role within the Power Monkey community. We have the very, very well-known and famous within the CrossFit and functional fitness world, Mr. Mike Cerbus. Mike, before we get to you, I just want to give a little bit of a rundown of your credentials and your background so that some new listeners who aren't quite familiar with who you are know of your amazing accolades. Mike is a multi-time national medalist in the sport of weightlifting. He's 2012 Pan American and Olympic qualification team. He was also the 2011 American Open champion. He has a Bachelor of Science in Education. He is a graduate levels studies in counseling and leadership. And he's been a weightlifting and CrossFit functional fitness coach for the past 8 years. Mike, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me on, guys.
Well, Mike, you know that both of us know you quite well. I mean, you and Chad go back years and years, and you've been part of the Power Monkey team for, almost a decade now. It's pretty incredible how fast time goes. But we definitely want to kind of dive in and let the listeners who don't know who you are find out what an amazing person you are and even more amazing coach. So without further ado, I'm going to start off on the questions here and let Chad kind of just take over after that. But from a coaching perspective, what do you kind of look for, or what do you strive to be in terms of a good coach? What do you look for in a good coach? What do you try to be as a good coach? What do those mean? What do those words mean to you in terms of when you're interacting with someone who you're trying to coach, whether that be an Olympic weightlifter or just someone who's trying to move better?
Yeah, I think when I think good coach, I think of connecting. So the relationship between the athlete and the coach, or the team and the coach. And just from my background playing other sports growing up and then getting into weightlifting, I realize kind of when I reflect that when I was maybe performing the best or in sync the most with a coach, it really never had much to do with a specific program or a training philosophy or practice times, depending on what sport it was. But it was, for me, it was if I liked the coach and I respected the coach, probably respect before like, then I usually performed better. And when I observe a lot of other athletes, it usually comes down to that, the coach that they respect and then the coach that they also like on top of that. So just that kind of that interpersonal relationship and just general, you would call it like, back and forth, like does the coach like the athlete and connect with the athlete, and then back to the other way, does the athlete connect with the coach?
Mike, I feel like you were saying that you don't like Lou very much, but you respect him very much.
No, Chad is referencing the coach that got me started in weightlifting, but actually worked with Chad before he even worked with me. That's how old Chad is.
Thank you for that.
My coach that I started with was Lou DeMarco, and he was very much like a father figure for me. So that can have good and bad areas. I respect him more than almost anybody else in the world, and I love him more than anybody else in the world. But there were definitely times where both of us did not like each other, and I would say my competitive performances occasionally suffered from that dislike. And there's lots of depth to all of those things, but definitely the respect part I've always had for Lou.
Yeah, that might be a whole other separate recording, just us talking about Lou, right? Lou's pretty famous in the weightlifting world, and he's got some good stories himself, and there's a lot to talk about when it comes to Lou. But moving forward, Mike, it's going to be kind of hard for me to ask you any serious questions. Probably you're still like my annoying younger brother. Mike used to kind of tag along when he was much younger, and even came and hang out with my family and stuff like that. And I'm proud of you. I definitely want to say that I'm very proud of you for what you've been able to do as a coach in this community and everything else. And I say that word coach, I still have a hard time calling myself a coach. I really don't see myself as a coach. I see myself as more of a teacher. Mm-hmm. Do you see yourself as more of a teacher or a coach, or do you differentiate between those two terms?
Yeah, it's like a battle of semantics, but Yeah, I wouldn't call myself a coach. I definitely feel like I'm an educator, and that's in, kind of whatever I feel passionate about and feel like I'm knowledgeable about. And I think you and I have talked about that in the past. And even Lou, my coach, would always say, "Don't ever call me coach. I'm not a coach." And maybe
Right.
that's some bias from me, but he was a teacher and he was an athlete, and then he just loved being able to share what he had learned with his experiences. And I think sometimes that can help. I liked training with coaches that were past athletes and that had a little bit more of like an older brother type feel, or an uncle type feel, where you knew they'd gone through similar things that you'd gone through and they could really relate and connect, but at the same time they'd put in their practice to be functional, to be good, effective coaches.
Yeah.
Well, first I have to say I want to jump in really quickly. Chad, I am proud of you for actually going out on a limb and saying something nice about Mike. It
That
doesn't
was
happen too
tough.
Man,
often. I
yeah,
am
I'm
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 amazed that that happened within the first 5 minutes of this podcast. That
yeah,
was incredible.
I was just thinking, I kind of want to be on this podcast once a week because Dave's being so nice and sweet to me. Chad's saying nice things. It's, if for people that don't understand, I mean, these are like my two big brothers that I think I know they love me, but they also spend a lot of time shoving humble pie in my mouth and reminding me, where
We
I am on
love
the
you, Mike. We
on the
love you so
hierarchy.
much.
Yeah,
So
it is all out of love. It's all out of love.
Yep.
But Mike, in reality, though, I mean, I've traveled around the world with you many, many times over, and it's evident for everybody that we've come in contact with, everybody that you work with, that you make immediate connections with people, and you have an incredible ability to reach out to people, connect with them in a way that most people can't, and create really strong relationships with those people in a matter of minutes and hours and the days that we spend with them. It's a pretty remarkable talent. And I think that's one of the things that probably allows you to become the coach and the teacher, whatever you want to call it, at the level that you are. Um, but it's unique. It's not something that's easily accomplished. And I'm curious if this is something that you were able to gain from your background with your teaching experience, or what do you attribute your ability to connect with people from all over the world? Sometimes people that don't even speak your same language, some people that maybe you have one or two words in common with, but you're able to connect with them really quickly and at a really deep level. What do you attribute that to?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of ways that I could answer that. The first, I would think that, and I would hope that I do project that I genuinely love people. I mean, I really, really do. Any opportunity I get to just, whether it's a eye contact, a hug, a conversation, whatever it is, I feed off of it, and I love it, and I love to see people smile. I love to see people welcome. I don't know if that was, the way my mother raised me. I think it was a combination of a lot of things. Growing up with pretty strong principles from my mom that were grounded in my faith. Then going into athletics, where I did get to interact with a lot of different people from a lot of different backgrounds. I did spend some time as a teacher teaching middle school kids and some special ed classes, and working with people with developmental disorders, which gives you a whole other perspective on life. And then when we go into, like you said, traveling all over the world and just seeing different cultures and seeing how different people interact, and seeing that really kind of the one common theme is most people want to have some attention. They want to feel a connection. They want to feel a positive feeling, and that's an empowering moment for a coach or for a teacher to be able to deliver that feeling, and then you kind of receive it back as a default. So it's we could have an hour podcast on the psychology of kindness or the psychology of connections. Like Chad used to tease me when I was younger. He would say that I was the conversational wizard, because his wife actually let me come down and live with them for like a week or two at a time to train, and he's like, that's not so normal. She's not usually the one to just, let somebody come in and, hang out with our 1-year-old daughter or anything like that. But I would hope, we all have our faults and we all have our problems. But I would like to think that just if there's one word that I try to project, it's definitely just a love for people and moments and life.
Yeah, he's so good at that, Dave, that I still to this day don't completely trust him because he's so good. But he's also so good because here's the thing: that's definitely not a strength of mine. I think through Power Monkey Camp and those experiences through the last what's it been 5 years, I think, and how many camps
Coming
have
on
we
to our
even done
seventh,
now?
No,
man.
we're going
Coming
on
on to
7. Yeah.
yeah, so I don't even remember. But what are we on camp number 13 coming up? I think.
Mm-hmm.
So through that many times spending that long with people, it's definitely changed me in a lot of ways and made me at least a little bit better at that. But especially in the beginning, I'll tell you how good Mike is at this. Is he was able to make those connections for me. I don't know if he purposely did that, but I think just him being there and being a part of it and being around, he was able to assist me and make up for my lacking in that area. And as you've watched maybe me or other coaches, whoever it was, in this regard, in regards to personal interaction, that thing that is such a big important part of coaching. And if you're missing that, if you don't, you're definitely not going to have the whole package. So what do you notice, Mike, other coaches struggling with in this regard?
Oh, man, I think a lot of maybe coaches and probably all of us too, even as athletes, we oftentimes identify ourselves with results, with numbers, with rankings. Maybe it's for a weightlifting coach. How many weightlifters do I have? How many people are a part of my team, a part of my club? What do people say about me? How many of them do like me? How many of them don't like me? And sometimes it's even when it's not the intention, you can turn things into yourself. So you're constantly almost self-judging to make sure that you're doing all these things that are perfect or that are right. And then instead of being able to really, like we just said, focus on the relationships first. If if I'm coaching somebody and honestly, if they never improve on one of their lifts, but they're safe and they're happy and they're healthy and they feel like they could come to me to talk about a problem, then I feel successful. I feel really, really successful. Or if I can help somebody find a coach who's able to do that same thing for them and meet them where they're at. So I really do. I think that coaching has to be person focused first. You have to be able to adapt to the individual that you're working with. They might have some issues that are much more important than whatever their fitness is. And I think it is easy for all of us when we're with weightlifting or gymnastics or CrossFit or anything, is we're so focused on our sport and on those principles and objectives of the sport that we can lose track sometimes of the principles and objectives of like life. And if we put those kind of as the top of the priority chain, everything else starts to fall in line. At least that's what I've noticed and seen from I know I'm still, I guess, young in the general coaching scene, but that's where I fall in line. Is I always want the person and the athlete to be first, and even first in terms of their mental and physical health before their physical performance.
Yeah, that's definitely a great way to put it, Mike. I think teaching a lot of CrossFit over the last 10 years has slowly helped me realize that even more, because we have athletes coming into a CrossFit class, for example, that just want to be there for the community. And you know what? That's perfectly fine. If they don't necessarily care how much weight they put overhead, or if they don't necessarily care to ever really achieve a muscle up, they just want to be there for the community. They want to breathe hard and everything else like that. So that has helped me be able to mold and be okay with those types of things. But I'll tell you, every now and then it's still hard, and especially in the beginning for me, it was very hard in that regard, because I see physical potential in everyone. I want to bring out their physical potential, and I think I have information and talent and a skill to help pull that out of them if they would just do the mobility or whatever drill it is that I'm assigning to them, if they'll just get that done. But yeah, that's a great way to put it, and certainly something, as I mentioned, that I'm still working on myself. Now, this topic, it's very important, and yes, we could talk about it quite a bit more. But Mike, one of the things that, well, you're very good. I'm going to give you another compliment. You're very good at teaching everything weightlifting, and even just in general. You're definitely a good teacher, and your station at camp is the Snatch station. And maybe we'll switch that up one of these days. I know you've expressed interest in branching out a little bit more, but obviously you've gotten a lot of time and a lot of practice specifically with the Snatch for that specific reason, and traveling all around the world and doing regular seminars all the time. We want to provide to the listeners out there some recommendations, some tips for the snatch, and specifically helping them improve their snatch. So we'd like to cover with you your top 3 tips on improving the snatch. So what would number 1 be for you?
The number one, and people that know us are probably like, like enough, no more talking about the squat. And I did tweak it a little bit, because I would say my number 0, so my like pre number 1 is just the general squat. Make sure you can squat. We won't go any deeper in that. But no, number 1, if somebody wants to snatch, they have to be mobile and comfortable and strong in an overhead squat. The snatch, the overhead squat is the foundation of the snatch. So if you can't do that, or you're not comfortable in that, then that has to be your priority. So that absolutely has to be your priority. It would be, we always, when Dave and I are doing all the clinics and traveling, we make the cross comparisons from sports. But if somebody can't do a hollow hold, they probably don't need to be trying to do, bar muscle ups and ring muscle ups and all these crazy actions and kipping dynamic movements. It's the same in weightlifting. The snatch is the final part of your skill set. Like that's the competitive test. So for me, I want to break it down into smaller components and really start to diagnose that, and it falls in line with our Power Monkey principles, which are mobility, comfort, and then strength.
Right. Yeah. If your squat is on point, where, or not on point, where a lot of coaches and athletes in the community, they'll focus on having the perfect pull, for example, but they'll not maintain a full range of motion squat standard, for example. And so what that means for us is that you're kind of spinning your wheels a little bit, because if you have the best pull in the world, but you don't have a good bottom position with the bar overhead, then your priorities are a little bit out of whack. So of course, I'm thrilled to hear you say that as your number 1 thing there, Mike. And I typically agree with you in most things when it comes to weightlifting, but in life maybe not so much. No. So what would you say someone can do to get started in that regard? What would maybe their first step be?
Man, I mean, the dream is that somebody finds a gym community, a coaching community, or like a peer group that really appreciates good movement quality. So whatever your gym you're at, I would generally say gravitate towards the people that move well. Watch them, watch what they do, pick their brains. If somebody has an opportunity to find a coach that can work with them, then I mean, that's a dream scenario. I mean, you and I, we've been, both been weightlifting since we were young, and we still look at the other coaches and athletes that we respect and ask them what they're doing and try and pick their brains. It's no different for a beginner athlete or somebody getting started or somebody that struggles, for sure. So I would say you kind of, what is it they say, that you're reflected by the top 7 people that you spend your time with, or something like that. Your movement could be pretty similar. If you find that you're spending a lot of time around people that move well, some things are going to kind of spill over into your movement as well.
For sure. Dave, I want to ask real quick, just because we like to compare things, and what comes to my mind is the workout, I think, is it called Amanda maybe, that snatches and squat
Muscle ups,
snatches
yeah.
and muscle ups? Yeah. So if we go just kind of with that workout as a theme and say, we don't have to do 3 tips for the muscle up, but if there's a number 1 thing for the muscle up, what would you say that would be?
I think Mike already touched on it. It's about positions. It's about making sure the person understands, in the Power Monkey world, the way that we teach gymnastics movements has a 4-phase process to it. And the first one is about creating correct body positions. Do I have the mobility and do I have the core strength to be able to apply the positions as needed for dynamic actions? And on top of that, that phase 2 is building strict strength through a lot of positional work with eccentrics, through a lot of isometric work, before you even start to take it into something dynamic. Most people will jump to that phase 3 of dynamic action way before they're ready for it. Mm-hmm. That's where we start to see a lot of breakdown, a lot of inefficiencies, and worse things happen besides just inefficiencies. So it would fall in line with what you guys are teaching, the same thing too. Can the person get into a bottom squat? Can the person get into a really good overhead position? Same thing. Does the person have a nice hollow, a nice arch? Can they apply that into a swinging mechanic when it's needed? Normally, people are jumping right into those things a little bit too soon.
Yeah, and that's exactly it, Chad, with the snatch or the Olympic lifts in general, and that's at least what I feel like I've learned a lot from having to being privileged enough to observe probably easily over 100 of Dave's portions of the clinics that we do together, is seeing the amount of time that he or some of our other coaches like Colin and Shane and everybody, they break the movements down so small, and I think a lot of weightlifting coaches and us have done that in the past, but there was actually smaller components that we could break it down to. And I think we identify as weightlifters, you identify with the snatch and the clean and jerk, so that's what people want to do. So like in gymnastics, they jump to phase 3, they go into the quick dynamic testing movements, and they haven't established any of that baseline or any of those foundational movements that are what professional weightlifters ideally start when they're children, and they start to learn those things. Gymnasts start when they're children and they learn those things. So we always have to look at years training age, where are you at? It doesn't mean that you can't be attempting muscle ups or doing full squat snatches or clean and jerks, but if that's what you're spending all your time in and you haven't had the developmental time and all the other movements, you're at best you're just not going to get any better, but at worst you're going to set yourself up for some injuries or some chronic pains that you really don't need to, because our sports are traditionally very, very safe and very therapeutic when you do them correctly.
Right. And really what I got out of that whole thing, Dave, is that Mike is now going to lead both weightlifting and gymnastics at the upcoming Power Monkey clinics. Is that right?
I have no doubt that he's capable of doing it for the amount of time that he's heard me spew the information that we go through in clinics. He's been with me at so many clinics now that I'm pretty sure he could just run it himself. So, Mike, you've been upgraded. You have a promotion. You're doing both gymnastics and weightlifting moving forward. That's
the problem is that I get stuck in the first position of the evolution of the handstand. So our gymnastics program would devolve and then be stuck. So
you're in the Neanderthal position forever. You're just never evolving. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Yeah, and for those of you that don't know what that is, I don't know if there's some way that we can put that up on the screen or something, but that might be pretty cool. I would
love for there to be a screen grab of Dave's beautiful handstand, and then maybe Jordan on the back end can hook us up with yours. Yeah, just show more of a banana stand that I like to demonstrate.
Yeah, I will say that our producer Jordan is pretty freaking good at gymnastics, right? And really everything that he does. So
I think he's probably he's the best athlete out of all of us.
Absolutely.
No doubt. Easily.
I think Team Power Monkey goes Jordan and Dan Pope as the top 2, and then the rest of us all kind of fill in under there.
Pretty significantly after that.
Oh no, they make me feel so inadequate as an athlete. I'm going to be honest with you. I mean, I've been to the Olympics twice, but those guys are absolute animals.
Different world,
yeah. Let's go back to
Chad, that's actually, I was just gonna say though, you guys, us bringing them in just kind of segued very nicely to the second point for
perfect.
For
good
snatches.
Go for it.
I think if you look at somebody like our producer Jordan, or you look at a Dan Pope, those are both incredibly athletic people that did not grow up in gymnastics or in weightlifting, but they got synced up with the right people at the right time, and they spend so much time working on skills and drills and fundamentals they work on them more than I would say maybe we do now, and it's because they have a max potential in mind. They want to do these top end lifts and these top end gymnastics movements, but they value that they have to spend most of their time refining their technique and moving well. And that's generally what I go to, is once you've passed some movement tests. So for the snatch, if you can do a good quality overhead squat, then you should start accumulating time with your positions, with your technique, different variations, different components that are all technique based and at weights that you can definitely manage. So not maximum weights at all, but weights that are probably in that 50 to 60, maybe 70% feeling, where you could absolutely do more reps if you needed to with the same good technique.
Yeah, with that being said, I think it's always kind of hard for people to take that. So you're saying that I don't have to lift heavy very often, or that I shouldn't. That's not necessarily what we're saying. But Mike, how would you define that in regards to, say someone does take the time to, or they're taking the time to refine their technique, what percentage of their training should be that versus going heavy in the squat and the deadlift, and also combining that with actual snatches and clean and jerks?
Man, that's it's kind of like life. It's not a black and white answer. There's a big gray area for who it is. So if somebody moves really well, they can generally train a lot heavier and a lot more often if their movement quality is good. Somebody that has maybe struggles with some shoulder mobility or some ankle mobility, they're not going to be able to go as heavy as often because they're putting more stress on their body to go heavy. These are some of the conversations we have a lot with the PTs like Dan Pope and Dave Tilley that we work with is, everybody has to have a little bit of a different prescription when they're training. But if we take the same principles, the same fundamentals and methods that we use, then it really comes down to that other thing that you asked me is like what should an athlete do? Find a good coach that's honest with you, or be really, really honest with yourself. Are you accumulating good training? So even if the lifts are heavy, are the lifts that are heavy that you're doing, are they good lifts or are they bad lifts? At the end of the day, at the end of the week, at the end of the month, I want to be able to look back on my training and see, did I invest more in good quality reps or in they were okay, but they could have been better. And then at that point, it really doesn't matter about the weight, in the sense that unless I'm getting ready to peak for a PR that I want to make or peak for a competition that I want to do, I have to be accumulating more good quality and being patient to the fact that will stack up. It's an investment. I can't look to win the lottery every time that I train and hope that I hit a PR just because it was magic. I want to be able to predict more of my results.
No, I want to ask a question for both of you guys with regards to that. Now, would you say that an elite Olympic weightlifter, from what you're seeing now, what's happening within that world leading up to the Olympic Games, this is a perfect year to kind of have this kind of discussion, or what you did in your own training, would you say that a majority of your lifts while you were training were spent within that 50 to 70% range? And how often would you go towards that 90-plus range within your own personal training? Obviously, it would depend on where you are within the training cycle throughout the year, prepping for a comp. But could you guys give myself and other listeners who are a little bit new to the Olympic weightlifting world kind of how that translates into elite weightlifting?
So
Or is it
I think
fairly
I can
similar? Is
I
that what
could
you're trying
give
to-
I'll give a general answer, and then I think Chad could. I think it'd be valuable to hear just from his personal experience. But a lot of the resources that we use as coaches in weightlifting, we draw from a lot of studies that came from like old Russian training manuals and old Russian training schools, because they had a lot of data. But one of the cool things that came from some of that data was that when they looked at all of their national and international class weightlifters, if they did like a scatter plot of where do they hit the majority of their lifts over the course of the year, it was right around 70%. Like that was the most densely populated point for accumulated lifts. And when you think of a high level weightlifter, or if I think Chad will probably confirm, 70% is usually a weight that you could definitely do for sets of 3, probably sets of 4. Most weightlifters don't go for more than sets of 2 or 3. But even if you account all the time that you're spending warming up for your lifts that are 90%. So most people don't watch the warm-ups that a weightlifter does. They'll say, oh yeah, I saw him do 3 singles with 90% in training the other day. Yeah, and he did 8 sets of 2 with 70%, and he did another 8 sets of 2 with 80%, and then he did a bunch of singles with 85%. So it's kind of like that. You only see the tip of the iceberg with a lot of elite athletes, and you don't see what's going on underneath. It's not cool to watch. It's not cool to watch somebody do technique drills with 50% for an hour in their morning training session before they go into their PM training session and hit some heavier lifts.
Yeah, those are great points, and what I want to build on is the idea of we have to take the warm-ups into consideration. Those are more important than what people give credit for, because when I'm warming up, it's the bar, it's 35%, it's then 50%, then maybe 60, then maybe 70, and nobody really counts those as working weights. But when we think about what is the average percentage that we hit, we have to consider those, because when we're doing say 85% and above or 80% and above, we're not doing a tremendous number of repetitions in any given day at those loads, maybe 5 to 10 reps or something like that. 10 at 80% above would be a pretty tough day, if you're doing that in the snatch and in the clean and jerk as well. So what about those 10 to 15 or 20 reps that you did, that you accumulated at 70% or below, which are your warm-up weights? We have to think about those. We have to put purpose behind those, meaning we have to take those opportunities to practice our technique, to practice our focus, to practice the way that they're feeling, so that will bleed in to those heavier lifts a lot more. But in regards to any specific workouts that I did back in the day, yes, I was doing those warm-ups obviously to get up to those working weights, but I was never doing days necessarily that I was stopping at 70% or 60% unless it was like the week of the competition. Then I'm going to start manipulating and playing with those numbers a little bit. I'm going to start restricting myself to only 60 or 70% purposely, so I can peak, right? The thing of it though is going back to a little bit of what Mike was talking about too, in making sure that your technique is good, your movement quality is good. I realize now, as I've done a lot of reflection and trying to use my own experiences to help other people, I realize now that I was very lucky in that I was overall good mobility. I was balanced as an athlete. I had good enough technique to where I could get away with going heavy on a very regular basis. And I was always confused about why was I able to do that and get away with that and still improve and benefit from that, whereas some of my competitors were continually having recurring injuries when they were doing even less volume than I was. And it's obvious now that their mobility wasn't quite as good, or their technique or their balance as an athlete. So that's why it's so important for you guys to think about those things and take those into consideration. And if your mobility and your technique isn't quite there yet, then what Mike is saying is that you should spend even more reps on those lighter weights to help make those changes and improve the technique, and little to none on those heavy lifts, at least for a little while. And that really kind of, Mike, takes us in, unless Dave has another question or you have anything to add, takes us really into number 3, which we've been kind of talking about already, that you're going to cover. So can you lead us into that a little bit more?
Yeah, well, I'll add one little piece to that, is just that a lot of times too, when you think of yourself, Chad, or even myself, when we were lifting some of those heavier snatches, maybe not the snatches as much, but clean and jerk, they were relatively heavy weights for anything. So when you're making snatch attempts at 300 pounds at a body weight of 165 pounds, that's a big stressor on the body.
Right.
The clean, when athletes are clean and jerking 400 pounds, that's a legitimate strength movement, and you need to refine that a little. If you look at an average mover in the fitness community, their level of strength compared to their level of technique is really distorted. So some people will say, well, yeah, but if I don't snatch heavy, I'll never be able to snatch heavy. Yeah, but you're relatively very strong. Your movement patterns are just struggling. So you have to get those reps in that your movement patterns mimic what you want them to look like at a heavyweight. And that's what a professional athlete's able to do. They're able to continue to maintain technique even at really, really high intensities. Right. And I think that's one of the things we're always, coaching and teaching and pushing. And that would kind of go into number 3 for me is I think a lot of people lack the awareness of realizing how they're actually moving. And Dave's really good at asking the question in his session. He'll say, how many of you guys video yourself when you're doing gymnastics? And a lot of people don't put their hand up. And he says, what about weightlifting? And a couple more people put their hand up. But I've never seen everybody raise their hand at an event. And that tells me a lot. If you've never seen yourself move, as many crazy bad things as there are about all the social media and cameras and everything that we have going on in the world, watch yourself do a snatch, watch yourself do a handstand on the video, look at it, and then think in your head about how it felt. It's probably a lot different. I know that's the case for me with most of my, when I do something that's not weightlifting, how it feels in my head versus how it looks on the film is way different. So what am I cueing myself in the movement then if I don't even really know what it looks like? And I've said that to a lot of my own athletes is, record more of your videos and actually watch them, because I can tell you a lot of things, but you can also tell yourself a lot of things in the moment if you're videoing and you're watching those things.
Yeah, I can't agree with you more on that, Mike. Obviously, you've heard my take on this quite a bit when we're doing seminars, but One thing I want to mention first, your first comment having to do with the strength perspective of it. You're
Guest is
talking
on.
about, yeah, you're talking about people having a distorted combination of strength versus their movement pattern. And we see this quite often. And what ends up happening is, we work with general population a lot of times in our clinics, but we also have a tendency to, come across a lot of the elite athletes in the CrossFit and functional fitness world. And a lot of times we're having the general population watch an elite CrossFit athlete do a particular movement and think that they're doing it technically efficient. And I think this is sometimes something that needs to be looked at a little bit more deeply. Sometimes you have CrossFit athletes that are moving perfectly, really, really well, technically sound. And you have other athletes that are incredible in terms of finishing on the podium or maybe even winning an event, and their efficiency is poor. It's not great, but they make up for that poor efficiency because they're incredibly strong. And they can use that strength to make up for a lack of efficiency. And we'll see a lot of people kind of look at that athlete and say, well, they're winning an event, so they must be doing something right.
Yeah.
And what ends up happening is they don't have the strength to be able to move in that same movement pattern. So it's always a little bit, in my mind, yes, you want to watch yourself. Absolutely. Video yourself more often. See what you're doing right versus what you're doing wrong. I guarantee you, like Mike said, there's something going on different in your head versus what you're actually seeing. But also when you're watching other people, make sure that you're looking for correct technique and asking more questions as to what you're trying to emulate is correct, and then apply that into your own movement pattern rather than just saying, this person is really good at this event compared to the people that they're competing against. They must be doing it right.
Yeah, that's so true with so many things. And Chad, you probably can relate to this. So many people, and we can just use weightlifting as the example, they idolize the best weightlifters. All of the best weightlifters do not have great technique, and a lot of them can't move very well just in life once they're done competing because of what they did to their body when they were competing. But there's also some very incredible weightlifters. Chad is one of the examples that moves the way he's supposed to move, and that's why he's able to compete as a masters weightlifter and win world championships and get world records, even when he was competing at the world level and Olympic level as a younger athlete. And so self-awareness is a big thing. You can idolize somebody, or you can look up to somebody for how gritty they are and how strong they are and how resilient they are, but you want to mimic the people that move really well and that are staying healthy and things like that. And if I want to make a bunch of money and I look at somebody that makes a bunch of money but I don't know how they did it, I might be trying to model after somebody that has really, really bad methods and really bad tendencies. So I think we always have to dig a little bit deeper, and that's what's I enjoy about these types of conversations with different coaches, different athletes, and I like watching podcasts and listening to people go deeper than just a program, or go deeper than just well, that lifter snatches this much, I should probably do the program they're on. And those are the questions I get asked a lot at events too, like, okay, yeah, no, I get the technique you're talking about, so what program is good for me? Every program is good for everybody. If you move well, almost every program is going to work well. And if you move poor, most programs are going to not do very well. And that's kind of the self-accountability that you get from videoing yourself, watching the video, and then having somebody that's a coach or a training partner that you trust and knows you to kind of look over those things and start to pick apart your own movements, I think is kind of the final piece of growing as an athlete, and then even growing as a coach is paying even more attention to the videos and the small movements and the small pieces, not just the numbers and not just the progress.
Yeah, go ahead, Dave.
I was going to say, well, these 3 points, Chad, if you want to go a little deeper into that number 3, let me know. But Mike, what you're saying here is, there are certain things that we're looking for in terms of programming. A lot of programs can work well for different people if they move well. Mm-hmm. How do you prioritize these 3 points when you're putting a program together, or how would you normally try to take these important steps and apply them to an athlete? How do you normally do that when you're working with a client?
Ooh. I mean, I definitely have to put clients' goals as a priority. So that goes back down to the relationship part. I can want somebody to move perfect, but if they really don't care, then I'm going to be saying a bunch of things that have no relevance or don't matter to them. And I had an athlete recently who called me out on it, and it was good. And I had to swallow my pride a little bit because I wanted to argue and tell him, no, you know, what I'm having you do is the right thing, and that's what you should be doing. And he said, I really don't care. He said, I haven't gone heavy really this year, and I want to. And I said, yeah, but you know, I think there's these couple of things that you know we could fix, and we could do this, and we could do that. But to be honest, he's moving fine. He's not moving bad. He's not getting hurt. There's no problem with his movement. I'm just being a little bit picky. So I would say, and that I think that's a good maybe piece of advice for all of us as coaches and other coaches is be aware of what your athlete's goals are first. If somebody's goal is to compete, then make sure you're going to keep them healthy, but make sure you're focused on their competitive goals and their timeline, and stacking up the right training peaking phases and volume phases and rebuilding phases that are going to line them up for that. In the same sense, I have some athletes that I work with that I really do love them because they're like, man, I don't care how much I snatch, how much I clean and jerk. I just want it to feel good, and I want to be able to do it 20 years from now. And I'm like, oh, that's great, because more often than not, that's also the person that starts to make some really good progress because they're not really worried about the numbers. They're just focused on how they move, and when it feels good, and all of a sudden they find that they get a pretty solid PR out of that. But yeah, so Dave, just with your question, when I'm prioritizing things, I have to often remind myself and check in with athletes, you know, what are your goals? What are we working on? If your goal for me as the coach is just to make sure that your technique is improving, then that's actually pretty easy for me. I can give you the most boring, monotonous, repetitive drills that will work. They just won't be the sexy ones that you put on Instagram. But I think some balance in that of figuring out for everybody what is their good quality training weight. So when they're working, and I think, Chad, you probably would agree with that, the goal would be to get people to be really quality between 80 and 90% and start to accumulate, you know, lifts that are in that range and squats that are in that range, but kind of stacking that up and being honest with that. And then, then the last piece is having some good modes of assessment, and video seems to be the best one. And we've got enough databases out there now, and, you know, programming platforms where we can save videos, and I'm able to look back on videos. Dave, you and I think Chad, you do. The three of us use TrueCoach for video, and we can go back 3, 4, 5 years now from when we've been using that, and we can look at results and we can look at movement patterns, and it's pretty helpful to be able to put that all out there for me, one, as a coach, and then to also send back and show some things to some of my athletes.
So yeah, I think the easy part for us, and I'm sure you would agree, Mike, is putting a good general program together, meaning, you know, sets and reps and percentages, and making sure that the volume is right. We're doing the appropriate amount of squatting and partial and full Olympic lifts and stuff like that. But the fun part for me is definitely those instances where someone does really want to make mobility and technical changes, and having to be creative with specific technique drills and mobility drills, and having to manipulate the program. Now that does take a good amount of time and energy, but it's definitely the fun part. Do you also do a lot of that with your online clients?
Yeah, I mean, I guess if we polled all of my athletes, they would probably say they're in a constant state of refining positions, and me asking them a lot of questions. And I generally put that when I start working with somebody new, I say, you know, I want your goals. We have that all in mind. But your program is going to build on a week to week and month to month basis on a lot of answers that you give me. So I really have, it's kind of turned into where I want to see that my athletes are aware of what they're doing right and what they're doing wrong. And that's been helpful with some of the newer people that I work with is kind of getting them to adapt a little bit quicker and be a little bit more accountable on their end to be able to progress through the fun stuff, which is the numbers and the percentages and the testing and the retesting.
For sure. Yes. Communication. That's so important, specifically and especially with online coaching, and not only from our perspective as the coaches, but for anyone out there that does want to really be the best that they can. And if you're paying for video review, please use it, right? Yeah, we need you to send those videos in so we can make those good changes. But Mike, we want to switch gears a little bit now, and we've mentioned that you spend so much time on the road, so much time traveling, and really making friends all over the world. I was surprised at something that you mentioned on this questionnaire that we give out to everyone, that you used to be completely afraid to travel and to make any type of relationship commitment. So I'm wondering, is when you say any type of relationship commitment, are you referring to the romantic side or just in general? And something that I want to bring up too, because I know that I've struggled with this with some certain issues that happened as I was growing up. Do you feel like your dad leaving your family when you were 14 played a role in that any at all?
This is like Dave talking about gymnastics. My emotional state is like a four-tiered process. It starts with shapes and awareness, and then goes from yeah, like I when you ask some of those probing questions in the questionnaire, and I've thought about it in the past. All the countries and all the places in the United States that Dave and I have traveled to together. I've definitely traveled with Dave to more places than anywhere else, and probably in the last 5 years spent more time with him than anybody else. But I didn't leave the country until I was 25. So in the last 8 years, I've kind of sped through a lot of things that I never thought that I would, one, want to do, and two, get the opportunity to do. So yeah, growing up in a town that has like barely 1,000 people, and Chad, I know you can relate to that. It seemed weird to me to want to be anywhere else. Like, why would I want to go to New York City, or why would I want to leave the country? This America, it's great, everything, which it is, but there's great places all over the world. And thank God for weightlifting. And it took me just traveling around the country a little bit to compete at national championships and regional type meets. And then, I was fortunate enough for you to get a little injury and put me on one of our national teams so that I could go leave the country, and I kind of got the bug to leave the country. So I would say my fear of like traveling or going anywhere, weightlifting took me out of that, because I saw how cool it was to go see people that speak different languages and live different lifestyles, and just how beautiful that process is. It definitely took me a lot longer to go into the next part, which was not being very, very afraid to. I've always been pretty easy to commit to friendships. So yeah, the platonic side of relationships, I hold all my friends really, really dear. And I actually get pretty sad that I don't feel like I can talk to and spend enough time with all of the friends that I've developed over the last few years. But I think I probably use that as a little bit of a buffer to not have to really seek out or connect or get too vulnerable to a significant other. But thankfully, Dave brought me into Power Monkey and made me start traveling all over, and I would say supernaturally found my partner for life in a clinic setting in another country. So little by little, I would say just the perspective of opening up and seeing the world and realizing that we're all a little bit smaller and not quite as important as what we might think, has broken down some of those personal barriers.
Well, I just want to say you're welcome, Mike, for helping you find the love of your life. Marie, who's also needing to be recognized because she's amazing in her own right. But, I think a lot of people who just know Mike Cerbus from his amazing Instagram account are going to be very upset to hear that Mike is going to be taken off the market very soon, marriage coming very soon. Mike is, and I'm not saying this because I've heard other people say this, Mike is considered the Brad Pitt of the CrossFit and fitness community. We travel around the world, and people are just in awe of the beauty that Mike exudes. It's unbelievable, the comments that we get from people all over the world. They're like, this guy, I can't listen to him. I can't look at him. It's just, the guy is from another world. And, Mike, I never looked at you that way, but we get enough comments. We get enough comments from people around the world that I know people are going to be upset to hear that you're going to be taken off the market shortly, but Congratulations on finding someone, and I am so happy that you did through Power Monkey. It means the world to me that Power Monkey helped facilitate that missing link in your life and being able to find somebody to spend the rest of your life with.
Oh man, yeah. If I mean, really, Chad and Dave and Chad, you probably know from knowing me since I was like 15. But if you asked me for the last 10 years if I would get married or see myself married, I would say, I don't think so. I think I'm happy to have all my friends and just kind of do that thing, and that no problem. I'll be happy and content. And yeah, really, maybe some good modeling from Chad and Jody and Dave and Sadie, and seeing how cool it is to be two and not to be one. Yeah, I'm excited too, and I'm not sure what all the comments are from. I think I just smile a lot and say nice things, and then that makes everybody feel good, and there's some type of weird funnel over. But yeah, the Brad Pitt comment was pretty funny. I don't remember where that. I think that was like a guy in Mexico or something.
No, it was in Spain.
Like,
it was in Spain.
Was that Spain?
Yep.
Okay, yeah.
It was a group of like 10 women that all showed up together, and I think they just came to hang out with you and just take pictures with you.
Yeah, I was gonna say I think that's about the number of signups we get for Power Monkey Camp. There's about 10 signups each camp, male and female, that come just to look at Mike Cerbus. So I don't know what we're gonna do moving forward. We're gonna lose those 10 signups.
I'm only gonna be happier and smiling more. So I'm probably more inclined to give more hugs now because I'll be more more comfortable with myself. So
you sound like Olaf, man. I like hugs.
I do. I think we were. It was. I was teaching a workshop recently, and the one guy was like, "I want to do it. I forgot to pay. Can I pay?" I said, "Yeah, just pay, or 5 hugs, whatever whatever you want." We take trades.
Man, that's a pretty good comparison, though, Olaf. That's Mike for you right there. If you want to know Mike Cerbus, he's pretty much Olaf.
You ran from Brad Pitt to Olaf really quickly.
I'll take you know what, Chad? I'll take Olaf because I think Chad remembers what Lou used to call me. So and that's actually what Chad probably called me for about 10 years. So,
what I called you, that's what I still call you. You're always
true. It's true.
You're always asshole to me. So
yep,
there it is.
Is the most endearing nickname I ever got from the age of like 16 to now.
It's an affectionate nickname.
Really is.
So, Mike, building off of this traveling and you spending a lot of your time international these days, I know you've been in Germany for the last few months and just recently got back to the States, but we're planning on doing more and more outside of the States with Power Monkey as our reach grows and as our following outside of the States continues to grow as well. And I want you to touch on something that you've been having a big hand in with regards to our new retreats. And if you can give the listeners a little bit of an insight into what we're anticipating with our Power Monkey retreats, what they're all about, and what we're looking forward to in 2020.
Yeah, so I think most of our listeners are probably familiar with our Power Monkey Camp. If you're not, then you should definitely check it out. Maybe this is where Jordan can put the powermonkeycamp.com in there. If you want to spend a full week with us at camp, we love it, and we cap it at 100 people. But one of the things that I think Dave and I really noticed over the last few years, we travel to some crazy places, some really, really cool places. And we find ourselves talking about them a lot and telling people about them. And you can just see the like, oh man, I wish I could go there. Or, oh, that's so cool. You guys get to travel all over the world, and then you work out in these different places, and you make friends. They take you on these little excursions, and you get to do things. And I mean, we've gotten to go in caves with monkeys in Malaysia, and we get to go on these cool field trips in South America and Israel and all these places. And we're really, really fortunate to make another really awesome friend who she has an amazing location in Crete in Greece, and we are going to in June of this year, so June of 2020, have our first small group. It's gonna be a retreat because it's an all-inclusive, very, very cool retreat where people are gonna fly out to Crete, and they're gonna get to spend 4 nights with I hope it's fortunate with me. I'll be there. But then Dave, and then Chris Henshaw will be there. And then we've got our two of our other family members, Jamie and Isaiah, who, if you've been to camp, you know who they are. They do all the VO2 max testing and a lot of the health and wellness testing, and they're going to be there doing some different things with the participants. But basically, what we wanted to do was kind of show everybody what it actually feels like the really cool like blessings that we get to have when we go to these amazing places. Is we get to see some things that you would not normally get to see. We still get to work out and do what we love to do while we're there, and we wanted to be able to share that with somebody and potentially let it grow and take it to some other places. So the first one that we're going to do is we invited some special people that were a part of our extended family, and I think we just recently have opened it up now and made it public, and I think we've got a few spots left. People have jumped on it really quick, and I think, Dave, you can probably say the same thing. I'm excited because they're some of these people are people we've spent some time with already, and I think it's going to be like a big family vacation, and that's how Power Monkey Camp feels for us. Every camp that we do, we make friends and family immediately, and then we get to share a lot of time with them.
Yeah, I think so too, in terms of the kind of experience that we're going to create. Mike, you were at the Stella is the Power Monkey family member that has the facility in Crete. And Mike, you were there last year, and I was out there with my family earlier this year. And the place is just spectacular. It's just like out of this
It's
world.
paradise.
Like, yeah, it's really, really just beautiful. If you haven't been to Greece before, if you haven't been to Crete before, it's one of those things that is just a must-see on your list of travels. We're like right up against the water. There's these beautiful islands. We would go on catamarans to go kind of snorkeling and looking around and seeing a bunch of different little caves and other pieces of the island. It's just fantastic. And I would highly recommend you guys checking out what we're trying to do with these higher end events through our retreats. June of 2020, as Mike mentioned, Crete is going to be our first one, but we're really excited about them. And really, if they go well and they show some promise, we have some other incredible locations on the agenda for 2020 at the end of the year and into 2021, if we can kind of, get people to be as interested as we are about them. So hopefully they can turn into something pretty special.
Yeah, it's really cool how the whole retreat thing came about, and it's really from you guys traveling to all these different locations and wanting to share those locations and those experiences with other people. I see this kind of commercial, or I hear this comment every now and then, that every time I hear it really grabs a hold of me and reteaches me something and motivates me to do things a little bit differently. And it's talking about with your kids, stop buying your kids things and more toys and more gadgets, and go somewhere with them, buy them an experience to Disneyland or whatever it is. And I think that's so very true for the listeners out there, for anyone, just for life in general. And so that always reminds me and makes me think about, when my kid wants something, when Ella wants me to buy her something, tell her no, save that money, put it aside so you can have a family vacation. And so that would be my recommendation for any of the listeners out there. If you're looking for something, an experience to have, think about spending it on something like that, as opposed to that nicer car or whatever it is that you're thinking about, because definitely that's what life is all about, is that I'm learning the hard way over years, is it's about relationships and it's about experiences. Two of the things that I hold dear that I get to share with these guys. And before I give Mike another compliment, let's just get into this, one of the last questions that we have for you, Mike, and kind of shifting gears from the retreats. We have a question that we're trying to ask every guest, and we have a running tally. And I'll just tell you, I'm not trying to sway you in any certain direction, Mike, but I'm way behind. As you know, Dave beats me in most everything, and even some weightlifting CrossFit workouts, he's actually beat me in pretty handily. So it's very shameful that I'm, but not surprising that I'm so far behind. And I've been terrified to have you on, Mike, because I'm really scared that you're going to answer away from where your heart really should truly lie.
All right, so don't lead him anymore. Don't lead him anymore.
Right.
See what he's got.
So the question is, what is the better sport? What is the better discipline? Is it gymnastics or is it weightlifting?
So this poses
He already knew. He
real
already knew. He didn't. You
real
didn't have to
dilemma.
Yeah.
No, I was just thinking, man, whatever the question is, I'm either going to have to stick to my roots or go where my bread is buttered. and I feel like they're pretty mixed together these days. I wonder if hopefully nobody answered like me, but I don't think that you can choose one over the other. I think that the dream scenario, if you want to be a weightlifter, so if you're a young child listening right now, go sign up for gymnastics. And if you end up falling in love with gymnastics, then just make sure you start doing some weightlifting to get your body stronger and protect it and make it more resilient. Use the gymnastic skills to come into weightlifting and give us some more world champions and some more Olympic hopefuls. But I really think my dream world, and maybe this is why I fell in love with Marie and I'm going to marry her, is if anybody asks her, she says that she thinks the perfect training regime is weightlifting and gymnastics, and then just a little bit of, and I say a little because I'm a biased weightlifter, a little bit of conditioning. But really, I think the mixture of the two sports makes for the most balanced individual, and you're going to be prepared and capable to do anything that you're asked in a functional fitness setting or in any type of other sport.
Well, Mike, you have a career of politics ahead of yourself, being the most diplomatic answer you could possibly get, a no answer.
Exactly. So Dave, we have to decide if we're going to accept that, and if we do we just count it as 0, 0, and 0, or do we give each you and myself a point? You know, quite honestly, I'll take a point any way I can get it at this point.
I would like to see a point dispersed to either. If you want to make it look a little bit funny, just give Chad a half point, and then But
and we could go cornhole rules here, and it's a wash.
Ooh.
Yeah, we're gonna have to wash it, I think. Yeah. And you know what? At least I'm trying to stay positive here. At least it wasn't the extreme answer that I thought I was going to get, which was he picks just gymnastics outright. Because
I thought we were moving in that direction. I thought I had done enough over the past 10 years to get Mike to answer in that way, but I guess there's still some loyalty there.
I was worried. I've called him asshole so many times that I thought that could contribute to that gymnastics answer as well.
Hey, love covers a multitude of sins. So, I have to go with my heart, and it's with both sports and with both guys that I'm talking to.
All right. Well, Mike, you have done us a service and a disservice. So let's just put it that way. So, we like to play a little game here at the end as well, and I have a new one for us here, Dave. We're gonna do. Depending on the time, we're going to do 2 or 3 rapid fire questions. And what that means, Mike, is that you have to answer without thinking a whole lot. Don't sit there and think about it too much. And you have to answer as quickly as you possibly can. Are you ready to play this game?
Yep.
Okay. So first question is, what is your favorite word and why?
Awesome.
Awesome is your favorite.
Yeah. Awesome. And I don't know why. It's a positive word. I like positive words, but I have found that I say it far too often when people are doing things. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's funny when I'm doing video review and I'm critiquing online clients, usually the first word, when they do something right, is excellent or nice. So I find myself using those excellent and nice words probably far too much. All right, next question. If you could have dinner with anyone dead or alive, who would it be?
Jesus.
It makes sense that you would answer the question in that way. What would you ask him?
Oh man, I think I'd give him a hug and tell him thank you, and then I'd tell him and then I'd say I can't wait to see him pretty soon. But yeah, that would give a lot of clarity to a lot of the things that I believe in, and that would be really, really special to me. So I couldn't think of anybody else that I would want to, even though I think I'll get that opportunity at some point.
All right. Well, that's a good answer. Let's go one more here. What is your favorite book, or which book would you most recommend to someone?
Oh, I have it in my head. Annie Sakamoto gave it to me, and I've recommended it to so many people. It's about an elephant. I'm forgetting the name now. Can you guys rewind? Here's a who. Modoc. So it's Modoc, and it's about a circus elephant. It's Dave. Have you read it? Or you heard
I
of
have it here. I haven't
You're-
read it yet. Sadie's read it.
Okay. Oh man, read it. You're gonna cry. I got really close. I'm a very emotional person, but I don't cry very often, and I got really teary eyed in it. So, it's just a really heartwarming story, and it's for anyone and ages like. If you read it to your 5-year-old, they'll love it, and if you're 9 years old or 90 years old, you'll love it. It's a really good story.
Well, Mike, it's interesting, and I'm offended that you've never recommended that book to me. I don't know if you think because I'm from small town Oklahoma that I can't read or what it is, but I guess I'll have to check it out.
Okay, yeah, MODOC, MODOC, and it's
Nice.
a pretty awesome story.
All right, guys, it's been a pleasure to be on with you guys once again, and an absolute pleasure to have one of our very important members of the family, Mr. Mike Cerbus. Be sure that you come spend a little bit of time with him at one of those new retreats or at Power Monkey Camp or at a weekend clinic. Also, guys, be sure to head over to powermonkeyfitness.com for services and other upcoming events. Check out our Instagram pages as well for regular teaching and technical content at Power Monkey Fitness, at Dave Durante, and also at Ollie Chad. That's OLYCHAD. We'd also love to hear from you guys. You can always leave us a rating or review wherever you're getting your podcast, or please don't hesitate to contact us with any questions or requests that you might have for the show by sending an email to podcast@powermonkeyfitness.com. On behalf of Power Monkey Fitness, we're your host. I'm Chad Vaughn with Dave Durante, and until next time, guys, thank you all for listening.